Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a Ugandan, in case many of you will be wondering, and I've been on the run since I was born. And this is really the journey that you will eventually see the link. During the days of Idi Amin, we then ran to Kenya, and were hosted very well by the Kenyan government. I then continued my run and ended up in the UK. And every time that I was forced to move on was when I stopped spending. And as soon as I wanted to start earning money in Kenya, then they moved me on. I eventually ended up in the UK where buying my studies. And as soon as I was looking for a job, then they tried to usher me out. And I continued and I insisted on staying by whatever means necessary, which I won't go into as a lawyer. But there is a serious side to that, and that just explains what our business is all about. Africa is really where we probably do almost 30 to 40% of our business as a firm, which Stephen didn't touch on, but it is an important part of our business. And not only in the energy sector, it's in the telecom sector, it's in the infrastructure sector. We have over 60 lawyers working full-time on Africa projects. And I'm one of those who spends all my time doing Africa work, initially for 15 years out of London, until I realized that the tax regime was not entirely in my favor, which explains my move to Dubai, which has absolutely no link to the work I do. Really, I wanted to just touch on a bit on our Africa practice, and the critical part of this, Africa practice is really where you see those dots on that map. Having done so much work in Africa, we had to work out how we work in Africa. And indeed, there is no English lawyer who's a Tanzanian lawyer. You get people selling their international skills into a number of jurisdictions. So we felt the right way to work with lawyers is not to sort of fly in and fly out, but actually to work with the very best lawyers on the continent. So about 12 years ago, in Tanzania, we had just concluded working on the first private toll road and decided to continue working with the firm that we had been working with. We assisted them with the things that are costly and expensive to them because they're very busy working, but we could bring perhaps the backup of a large international firm that could provide them with, whether it's the know-how, whether it's the back office support, whether it's secondments. And this model, we thought, well, why don't we do that everywhere we're working? And we then proceeded to Zambia, and wherever we went, it was critical that we found lawyers that actually were not simply flag bearers, but were actually the best lawyers in their jurisdictions. An example of how this search was particularly unique was in Uganda, where not finding perhaps a firm that we could work with on a number of our projects, we decided what to do next was to start up a firm from scratch. And we did one of those treasonable acts of asking the Attorney General to step down from cabinet, and that's the only minister who's stepped down, and put together a team of 6 lawyers. I don't think the government actually knows that up to now. But they lost probably one of their best attorney generals back in 2001. We put together and helped structure a law firm, which is now the largest law firm in Uganda. And actually, to again create another dotted line into the energy sector, that is now probably the most skilled, most professional energy firm in the country. And indeed have been, as you've been reading about some of the developments in Uganda, they are now, they've discovered lots of oil, which means I'll be going back eventually to my country to claim my dividends. But the important thing is gathering the skills. If we meet a firm that we feel we can work with, we'll be patient. In Uganda, we started it from scratch, and then we proceeded around the continent. Interestingly enough, the most difficult countries to partner with were in South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya, simply because they were very keen to keep these Englishmen away from their countries, and with their populations and their skills, they felt that they could certainly serve their clients more. Until you get lawyers like Noor, indeed, who see an extra dynamic to doing work in their jurisdictions, which is able to offer their clients a lot more. And that's really the dynamic, the other Africa dynamic of tying up with Kapdi Twala, whereby not only will we be working together on the energy projects which he's been working on, but actually he will be teaming up with another 200 lawyers on the continent in those 21 jurisdictions, teaming up with another 200 lawyers in 21 offices across 21 firms across the continent, many of which are oil producers, many of which will benefit from Nur Kapdi and his colleagues' support. And what we've been trying to do for a number of clients, and there are one or two in the room, is to create multi-jurisdictional teams and multi-ethnic, multi-cultural teams, and multi-skilled. So Nur Kapdi probably may be doing 50% of his work, we didn't tell him this, in Djibouti, and perhaps next in Somalia, where we've heard that they've now discovered a lot of oil. So maybe that'll be his next stop, but we didn't actually discuss that earlier. So really that's the nature of how we operate and how we see this great association operating. We do have another associate also in South Africa that we do a lot of M&A work with. But ultimately, you will have a repository of 250 lawyers on the continent, and much as it may put my colleagues in London out of business, nonetheless, it's really what we're here for, which is to grow businesses and to assist our clients in some of the most dynamic projects that we see across the continent today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.